Howdy, gang, and welcome to the second episode of Landis Confidential. I see Chris is waiting in the wings backstage, so I'm glad to announce that he will be on here tonight with me as we talk about the Blues Brothers and American Werewolf in London and coming soon, which frankly, till I started watching it, I did not realize that it's basically a trailer compilation hosted by Jamie Lee Curtis. But it was fun to watch. It was a little less than an hour. And I thought, what the hey, we'll go ahead and include it in this episode of Landis Confidential. Hey, Blissful. And we're going to get started with that in just a second. But I did want to get some housekeeping stuff out of the way. I did hear some more rumbles of thunder, so hopefully the weather will not affect this stream tonight. Hopefully we won't lose power or any such thing like that. So anyway, to get the housekeeping stuff out of the way, I just want to remind everybody that I do have a Discord that is free to join for Deadites on Deck. You can get on there and you can get on there and introduce yourself. You can get on there and talk about books, music, movies, boutique labels. If there's a hot new release that's come out, or maybe a not so hot release that you're excited about, and you want to share it with the other folks in the Discord, come on over. Like I said, it's free to join. All you will need is the invite, which I can put in the chat real quick here, and I will do that. So if you are at all interested in joining the Deadites on Deck Discord, you can join using this link. Now, I do know that there are some people that's not really interested in Discord, and I'll be honest with you, it is a glorified message board. That's what Discord is essentially. Now, I have heard that you can stream movies on there and not have to worry about, copyright claims and such stuff as that, but I don't know how to do that just yet. So I haven't been partaking of that part of Discord just yet. I also have a Patreon for Deadites on Deck that has three different tiers. The top tier being $25 a month. And you can go to this link to check out. I'm not going to go through all the tiers, but if you do join the top tier at $25 a month, you get a bunch of other options, but you get your choice of a Deadites on Deck t-shirt, hat, or mouse pad. And it will have a design similar to this one, only it will have Deadites on Deck on there as well. So $25 isn't a whole lot. I know in this day and age, anything's a lot of money because everybody needs money nowadays. But if you are interested in joining and can financially join, can't even talk tonight. The top tier is only $25 and you get your choice of a free t-shirt, mouse pad, or hat. So, plus if you join one of the other tiers, you can get an Evil Dead Chick button. So you can have your own Evil Dead Chick button with my face on it if you care to have that. And if you get the $25 a month tier, you'll have that button. Plus, you can get you a hat and you can stick that button on your hat if you want to. So we got that. Me and Candace are going to be starting a sister channel. I mean, the channel's already up, waiting on Woodstock. It's just that due to CrowdStrike, the software shitting the bed on Friday, it made some major snafus in my programming for Deadites on Deck. And then I got sick to top it off. I'm feeling better now, for which I'm thankful, but I did have to miss work today. Blissful, we're excited for the sister channel too as well. we're ready to get it kicked off the ground, but the karma keeps coming back to bite us for some reason. I don't know what we did to have karma bite us in the butt, but uh, yeah, Friday was bad for everybody. I know Chris had some trouble because of the CrowdStrike fiasco as well. The last thing I want to announce before me and Chris start talking about these movies is that me and Steve have started our own channel too, called We Watch Movies. And I can put that link. I have it in the links that are listed in the description. But in case you guys want to hear the first episode of We Watch Movies, where me and Steve talked about the movies we watched in the past week, some of them we watched the same movies, some of them, we watch movies separately. So if you want to hear us talk about all of that, be sure to check out our first episode of We Watch Movies. I think we talked about a total of 9 movies on that episode. Um, hey, my dear husband's on here too. Steve has, like, I can't see the emoji, but he's got rocket red countdown liftoff. So, um, and Blissful says, "Hey, Steve," and so without further ado, I'm going to get Chris on here so we can start talking about these John Landis movies. Hey, Chris.
Hey Dana, how's it going?
Much better than it was earlier today when I was sick and had to take off from work. I felt awful. And I know Candace has been having some issues
Yeah,
too.
I've not been feeling so great myself today either, actually. I don't know if it's just something going around or what it is, but I don't know. I haven't felt that great today.
Yeah, I think it's residual effects of Friday. We're just it brought us down, and then our immune system was down, and everything just attacked it. I think Candace said there was when she went to the doctor, they said there was a stomach virus going around in y'all's neck of the woods. So um,
I mean, maybe that's what it is. I mean, I've had some stomach problems today. I've had to go to the bathroom a few different times, so
mhm.
I don't know. But other than, I mean, not just that, but I don't know. I just feel like drained.
Yeah,
I,
I didn't have any energy either. Just none at all. And aching all over. I had a pounding headache this morning and yeah. Oh, Blissful says allergies are bad. The goldenrod is out. Well, yeah,
mm,
my allergies are a lot worse than they used to be too. Um, but I guess we'll go ahead and get started with the first movie, which I have a couple of visuals for two of these things. Now, the trailer compilation, I heard it's only available in VHS and Laserdisc, and I
mm.
don't have it either way, so I watched it on YouTube. Um, but the Blues Brothers, I do have a visual for it. It is a 4K, which it looks fantastic on 4K, by the way. Um, Blues Brothers, I'm going to talk a little bit about, and then I'm going to let Chris take the reins. But the Blues Brothers was another one of those movies that my dad introduced me to. My dad introduced me to the Blues Brothers. Another John Landis movie that I talked about last week. I think it was last week. I'm so messed up on my weeks now. I don't know what I've talked about when, but I think I talked about Animal House last week.
Mhm.
My dad introduced me to the television version of it. I didn't watch the rated R version. I don't want anybody to think my dad's a weirdo or anything. He said, "Hey, Dana, watch this movie with all this, Tim Matheson's ass being shown, stuff like that." No, and all that, the sex and nudity and stuff like that. No, I saw the TV version of it. Um, so Dad also introduced me to the Blues Brothers. He said, it's funny. It's got Dan Aykroyd and John Belushi on it. And Dad always talked about John Belushi getting the Holy Spirit in him and flipping down the aisle in the church. I remember my dad talking about that endlessly. So when I finally did get a chance to watch it on television the first time around, I absolutely love this movie, and I still love it today. Um, you couldn't ask for two better actors to star in this than Dan Aykroyd and John Belushi. John Belushi sadly didn't get past his prime because he died at an early age, sadly. But we got to see John Belushi in his prime, and that's all we got to see of him. But he was absolutely fantastic. I know John Belushi had his demons, which eventually, uh, you know, made made us be without John Belushi for the rest of the time to come, which is sad because I'm sure he could have made a lot more great movies. Um, but in his prime, he was just a genius. He was a comic genius, is what he was. And so is Dan Aykroyd. I love Dan Aykroyd. I could watch Dan Aykroyd in anything.
Mhm.
Love that guy. I could probably watch Dan Aykroyd in a horror movie being a serial killer, and I would still enjoy it. Because, like Ted Raimi, I've seen Ted Raimi play comedic roles, and I love him in comedic roles. But Ted Raimi also played a serial killer in Skinner. For those of you that have seen Skinner, and he's excellent in that as the brooding Dennis Skinner in that.
Mm.
Um, but the other thing that I really love about this movie, the comic genius of Dan Aykroyd and John Belushi, number one, the fantastic direction from Mr. John Landis, and the music. The music is the other star of this film because you have everybody in this, it seems like everybody that was anybody in the music scene at that time. You have Aretha Franklin, you have Ray Charles. You have other comic geniuses in here too. Let us not forget John Candy, who left us way too soon as well. John Candy's in this. Carrie Fisher, who bless her heart's no longer with us either. Carrie Fisher is fantastic in this. I just love everybody in this, from the actors on down through the musicians. And if you are feeling bummed out, put on the Blues Brothers. You won't feel bummed out for very long, because this thing will have you singing along and jumping up out of your chair. Well, maybe not literally jumping up out of your chair. It'll have you metaphorically flipping down the aisle, just like John Belushi in the film. The lines in this, we're on a mission from God. Every time Dan Aykroyd will say that. I can't say it like him, but we're on a mission from God. That's what he tells everybody in this film. And the big scene that I will never forget is them driving that cop car through the mall. Literally through the mall. I always remember that scene. And Chris, am I wrong? Are the Illinois Nazis on here? Isn't this the one that has the Illinois Nazis?
Um, I can't remember.
For some reason, I'm thinking I'm going to have to go back and watch it again just to make sure that this is the one. Because I thought this was the one that had.
I think so. Yeah, it is. Yeah, I just remember because like they're at the end, they're a part of that whole big chase that happens throughout the whole movie, and I've always said that that's one of the greatest like car chase sequences,
Oh, yeah.
in all of film history because I mean it runs through the whole movie.
Mm,
Um, and and the scene that stands out to me the most is when they're going through that shopping mall, which that was a real shopping mall in Illinois.
yes, it was.
It was abandoned, I believe, at the time, so they got it and had it set up to look like it was a functioning mall. So and as when I was a kid watching that, that was something that fooled me. I thought it was a real mall that was functioning. I was like, oh my gosh, they've destroyed this mall. And I love it though. And there's so many like just car like stunts and stuff in this. It's crazy cool. And the car that Jake and Elwood drive, which is a police car, but they call it the Blues Mobile, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, they had, I believe, it was like 12 or 13 different Bluesmobiles for filming of that because they went through so many and just destroyed so many cars and stuff and during the making of that. And but yeah, like the whole like the Illinois Nazi stuff, yeah, that was in there. I had to think about it for a second. I was like, oh yeah, that's like one of the big things
Mhm.
like towards the end of the film, like when well, I mean we can get into that later, but yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about now.
But I know I could talk about this film, talk about this film, talk about this film, but I want to give Chris a chance to talk about more of his memories of the Blues Brothers,
Mm,
like the first time he watched it, and what was his first impressions and all that. So I'm going to turn it over to Chris to talk about the film.
okay. Well, I guess I can start off by saying I remember watching Blues Brothers for the first time at a very early age. I can't tell you how old I was, but I just remember I was very young, and it was on TV. It was the TV version that I had seen for the first time, and I think I didn't even see it from the very beginning of the movie. I think like what caught my eye was they when I guess I was like flipping through the channels and it was the mall scene as they're driving through the mall, and I'm like, "What is going on here?" Like, "What is this? It's on TV." So I just started like, I was that appealed to me, and it like struck me as interesting. So I just started watching it from there, and I remember I watched the whole rest of the movie, and I was like, wow, I was thinking, "What is this movie? What is this movie?" And I think my dad or my brother or somebody came through the house as I was watching. They was like, "Oh, Blues Brothers." And I was like, "Oh, is that what this movie's called?" Um, but it just ended up becoming one of my favorite comedies of all time.
Mhm.
I've seen it countless times, but it's been a while. It's actually been probably a few years since I last watched it. Um, but I do love this movie so much. There's, you know, like you mentioned, the music in this is plays almost like a character in the film, and just how many of the ties of music it has, as far as all the different musicians that are featured in the movie. And I was looking into some stuff. I was to what stuff I could find like research for this
Mhm.
that I didn't really know about it for, and so there's one thing I did find that said that Dan Aykroyd actually wrote the initial script for this, and it was 3 times larger than what we actually get in the final version of the film. Um, because I guess John Landis just looked at it and was like, "Well, this is way too long," and he shortened it down within like 3 weeks, and then we got what we got. Um, so I thought that was pretty interesting, and which and I know we'll probably talk more about this here in a little bit when we talk about American Werewolf in London, but I also learned that David Naughton was not the first choice for American Werewolf in London. It was actually Dan Aykroyd. Um, but I guess something was going on at the time. Dan Aykroyd couldn't do it, so they had to get someone else um, to play in that movie. But I know, like you mentioned, there's a lot of different other celebrities. I mean, cameos and have little small parts in Blues Brothers, and Carrie Fisher's one of them. And I learned that she's also got engaged to Dan Aykroyd during the filming of Blues Brothers, which
Wow.
of course we know that marriage never happened.
Mhm.
Um, and it's an interesting story as to how they got engaged. So apparently she was eating something. Carrie Fisher was eating something, and she got choked. And Dan Aykroyd saved her and gave her the Heimlich maneuver. And then after he had saved her, he asked her to marry him. And that's so odd. Like I don't. It feels like it's just a joke, but apparently they legitimately got engaged. Um, but who knows what the whole story is behind that? Because like I've mentioned before, Carrie Fisher, can't remember the guy's name right now, but was dating Shelley Duvall, and Shelley Duvall introduced her boyfriend to Carrie Fisher, who he ended up leaving Shelley Duvall for Carrie Fisher. So Carrie Fisher's had a interesting life when it comes to relationships.
Interesting love life, evidently.
Um, but there is another, like you said, John Candy's in the movie. Paul Rubens is in the movie.
Yes, sir.
Let alone all the different musicians like you said, Ray Charles, Rich Franklin, and I can't. Was Paul Schaefer? I cannot remember. It seems like Paul Schaefer was in the movie.
Seems like he is, and I forgot Cab Calloway too. Cab
Yeah, that's
Calloway
right.
does Minnie the Moocher in the movie.
Um, but like I guess overall, like there's a lot of stuff you could say about this movie, but it's like I said, it's one of my favorite comedies of all time. I just kind of, and I discovered it by accident as a kid, just flipping through channels on the TV. And, I'd already knew Dan Aykroyd before that because of Ghostbusters, because that was probably the first thing that I ever knew Dan Aykroyd from was Ghostbusters, because I can remember, loving Ghostbusters at extremely young age. So it's been kind of a lifelong thing for me, loving Ghostbusters. But I think that's, kind of got me interested, more in actors, as when I started would see them in um, multiple things like that. Like, I knew Dan Aykroyd from Ghostbusters, so then I see him in Blues Brothers. And it was always kind of a thing for me after that, whenever I would see somebody in a movie, especially like Jim Carrey or Robin Williams. I was a big fan of both of those guys when I was a kid. So every time I was going to like the video store or something, and if I seen like a movie with like Dan Aykroyd in it, or Jim Carrey, or Rob Williams, or somebody I'd already seen like multiple of their movies, I'll be like, oh, there's another one of their movies. I'm gonna check that out. And I mean, that's just been, like I said, like a lifelong passion thing for me as far as that goes, is movies, and just um, helping me discover more and more stuff because of these people that were involved, whether it be an actor or a director or a producer or whatever, or makeup effects, like Tom Savini. I love Tom Savini,
Yeah.
and so I usually check out everything that he's worked on or been a part of. But not to get off too much off the beaten path there, but yeah, Blues Brothers is great. I mean, if you've never seen it, where have you been? Have you been under a rock? I mean, come on.
Yeah,
If,
you need to
if
crawl out from under the rock and go
you
watch.
enjoy John Belushi, if you enjoy Dan Aykroyd or any of these people that we have mentioned, if you enjoy car chase movies, or if you enjoy movies based around music, just absolute chaos. There's this. You got to check out Blues Brothers, and you know, if you choose not to check out Blues Brothers,
I'm
what are you
gonna send
doing?
Chris
What
to
are you doing?
your house. Chris is gonna be standing at your door saying, "Why don't you watch Blues Brothers?"
Yeah, but yeah, I do. I do. That movie, it does mean a lot to me. Like, and I've seen it many times, and one other thing interesting I found out is Dan Aykroyd was paid half of what John Belushi earned. So John Belushi got a $500,000 paycheck for Blues Brothers. Dan Aykroyd only got 250,000. So that's interesting.
Yeah, I take 250,000.
Yeah, I mean, I'd take that right now all day.
If somebody wants to give me that, I'll go be in their film for them. I don't think anybody's going to give me that, but they probably wouldn't give me 100,000. They say, no, who are you? So I guess me and Chris will go ahead and give our rating for Blues Brothers before we move on to An American Werewolf in London. So I have to. I mean, I have to give Blues Brothers 5 deadites out of 5 because to me this is classic. Now, people might disagree. Chris may even disagree with that rating. And that's okay. That's what makes the world go round. Everybody's got different thoughts and ideas. But I really think the Blues Brothers has a great mixture of everything that makes a movie great. And and John Landis put all the puzzle pieces together in the right way to make this movie enjoyable. There are no slow parts in this that I can recall, and I've seen Blues Brothers numerous times. Um, it has great acting in it, it has fantastic music in it, and it's to me, it's a feel good film. Some people might laugh at that, but if I'm feeling bad and I put this movie on, I don't feel bad anymore. You know what I mean? It's just, it gets me out of my funk. If I'm in a funk and I put in the Blues Brothers, I'm going to be out of that funk within the first 5 or 10 minutes of this film. That's how fast it works. So I'm going to quit blabbing. I'm going to let Chris give his rating on Blues Brothers.
So you may be surprised, but and this will be the second time I've ever done this on here, but this would be a 5 for me, absolutely all day. Um, I mean, like I said, this is one of my favorite comedies of all time. I mean, it's absolute like genius, like act acting work in this from both John Belushi and Dan Aykroyd. I mean, it's so like it's it's like deadpan humor is
Yeah.
what it is. It's like because both of them are like just serious as a heart attack personalities in this, but at the same time the way they the vibe they give off about their characters is hilarious because um, just based off the conversations that they have with other characters in the film, and just like the thing with Carrie Fisher. So Carrie Fisher plays Jake's girlfriend in
Hmm.
this. Uh, and there's the part where she's like trying to kill him. Basically, she's got the shotgun and all that, and it's just I don't know, just the reaction, the reactions to all that, and the whole car chase, and how everything just plays out. Like I said, that my favorite scene in the whole movie is the mall chase scene, and I don't know. There's really no way to describe it. I mean, if you don't know what I'm talking about, if you've never seen it, like I said, well, what? First of all, watch the whole movie.
Yeah.
But if you need any kind of like anything that will help you, just, well, why should I watch this movie? Just go watch the mall chase scene on YouTube and be like, oh, that's crazy. I was like, what else happens in this movie? So maybe that'll entice you to to watch it if you don't know anything about the Blues Brothers and you've never seen it. But
Hmm.
absolutely, 5 deadites out of 5 for me. I mean, and I don't see that ever changing. Like I said,
No.
this movie is a comedic masterpiece.
Yeah. I 100% agree with everything Chris said and his rating, of course, because we actually had the same rating. So yeah, like Chris says, if you've never seen Blues Brothers, I don't mean this offensive. I just mean crawl out from under your rock, go find. I'm not telling you to go spend your hard earned money on it, but you should be able to find this somewhere or find somebody that has it, a good friend, a family member that you could borrow this movie from and watch it. And also, I just wanted to say that if you are able, and I think there was a Blu-ray version that was like this too, in case you're not set up for 4K, that has both the theatrical and the extended versions. And I really enjoyed watching the extended version as
I
well.
have never seen that cover art before though, so I really do like that on that cover art on the
Yeah,
4K.
I do too. And I mean, of course, the slip cover is the same as the inside, but yeah, that is a unique cover because I was so used to seeing that mostly blue cover
Hmm.
for the Blues Brothers. Yeah, this is definitely a kind of almost like a pop art type of cover to me. It is, or an urban, almost like it's something that you would see on the side of a building or
Right.
something like that. Um, but we'll go ahead and we'll move on to, and yes, I've got the 4K version of An American Werewolf in London. This is the Arrow release.
Hmm.
Um, oh my gosh, I have absolutely loved this movie from day one. I'm a big fan of werewolf movies anyway, and this is going to probably be controversial with people. This might be controversial with Chris because I know he's a big Joe Dante fan.
Hmm.
But if somebody was holding a gun to my head and said, "You got to tell me between The Howling and American Werewolf in London, which one is your favorite out of the two of those favorite werewolf film?" I'd have to go with American Werewolf in London. And it only edges out The Howling by just a tiny bit because I love The Howling too. I really, really
I
do.
would actually say the same. I mean, as much of a Joe Dante fan that I am, yes, but I feel like this is the superior werewolf film out of those two. And both of those were released in the same year, 1981. Um, so they had a little bit of a werewolf competition going there in 1981. Um, and this is probably in well, it's definitely in my top five, but it's in top three. So it's going to be probably number two on my favorite werewolf films of all time. I mean, Ginger Snaps is my favorite.
Okay.
And then American Werewolf in London. And then probably number three I'd have to think about it real good, but it's a toss up between The Howling and Dog Soldiers.
Hmm.
Uh,
Okay.
but I, like you, I am a very big werewolf fanatic when it comes to the films, whether it be, American Werewolf in London, The Howling, Ginger Snaps, Dog Soldiers, Bad Moon, Wolf with Jack Nicholson,
Yeah.
Silver Bullet. I mean, you could go on and on and on and on.
Hmm.
But this one stands out so much, I think, because not only is it just a straight up horror werewolf film, but there's a lot of comedy to it too, and that's because of John Landis and what he brought to the table here. Because he started in comedy before he started to getting into the horror genre.
Hmm.
And even though his first film Schlock
Yeah.
um, was, it's kind of like a mixture. It's got like the horror and sci-fi and comedy and
Mhm.
different stuff, like, all kind of tied into one. Because I think John Landis, I see a lot of myself in him because he isn't just tied to one genre.
Right.
Because I'm a fan of horror. Horror is my favorite genre. But I also am much of a fan of comedy films and action films and sci-fi, and I like, some like romantic comedies and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Just So I'm never like tied down to one film genre, and I that's why I always admired about John Landis, because he mixed it up a lot. You had a lot of the typical like horror directors like John Carpenter and Wes Craven and
Yeah.
Sam Raimi, and which Sam Raimi did more than just horror as well. But the majority of their filmography that they did was around the horror genre,
Mhm.
which honestly, if I think about it, John Landis has done more comedy than he has done horror.
Yep.
Um, and like I said, that's why, I love American Werewolf in London, though, because, he threw that comedy genre like into the mix with the horror, to so that way it would target multiple different types of audiences. Um, and you have stuff in there like Rick Mayall from the Young Ones and Drop Dead Fred, who has a
Yep.
cameo at the beginning in the Slaughtered Lamb Pub. Um, and you have stuff like, which is, I should have mentioned this too, like when we were talking about Blues Brothers, but um, John Landis has a running joke pretty much in a lot of his films.
Yes.
It's like the fake porno film that he made up called "See You Next Wednesday," and there's stuff in like a lot of his films, whether it be Blues Brothers, Kentucky Fried Movie,
Mm.
it's the fake film that David and Jack go and see later in the film when it's the zombie Jack.
Yeah.
There's in it, so there's a lot that shows up, and I think it even shows up as like a poster or like a marquee or something in the Michael Jackson Thriller music video.
I think it
Uh,
does. I'm pretty sure it does.
which, speaking of that pretty much the success of American Werewolf in London is what led to John Landis being able to work with Michael Jackson to do the Thriller video.
Mhm.
Um, because Michael Jackson was a uh, he recognized, because Rick Baker won an Oscar for the makeup effects in this,
Which is amazing in and of
which
itself.
is 100% practical effects.
Yeah.
And I think he was only the third person to ever win an Oscar for best makeup.
Mhm.
But I think that's what drew Michael Jackson's attention because of that, because he wanted Rick Baker to work on the Thriller video as well, as far as when they did, all the makeup for the zombies or the werewolf, Michael Jackson in the beginning of the Thriller video. Um, and also learned that that Thriller video came very close to not even getting made, because in the midst of it being made, Michael Jackson, he had some issues with it as far as like his religion was concerned and everything, because that's why when you see the Thriller video nowadays, there's always a statement before the video about how that he doesn't like endorse the cult and all this stuff. And
Right.
so, but yeah, sorry I got off track there a little bit.
Oh, that's
Oh,
fine. I'm actually gonna next week's Landis Confidential, even though Thriller is a music video and not a movie, it's very cinematic. So I'm gonna
it
talk
is.
about it a little bit, um, probably at the beginning of next week's Landis Confidential. So y'all be prepared for that. I'm gonna be talking about Thriller. I can't help but not talk about it because Thriller is one of my all-time favorite music videos ever.
Yeah, it's great. It also has Vincent Price
Yes,
attached to
it
it, so
does.
that's another reason I love it.
Yes. Um, American Werewolf in London, for me, from the first moment I saw it, I was in love with this movie.
Mhm.
And Chris is exactly correct. This movie has the perfect balance of horror and comedy. And I think that's what makes this movie more memorable than your standard werewolf movie. A werewolf movie that's all hard. Now, with that being said, Joe Dante's The Howling had some comedic elements, but I think The Howling was a lot darker than American Werewolf in London. Still, yet it was a lot darker. Um, but again, Landis had the perfect balance of horror and humor in this. There's just no doubt about it. And I think that is really what makes this a memorable werewolf movie. It's not your standard run of the mill Guy gets attacked by a wolf. He turns into the wolf man, and he goes and attacks other people. Right. So one of the things that it makes this memorable for me is I can quote certain lines from this movie verbatim usually. Um, don't ask me to do it now because I'll foul up on it. But usually I can. But one of the things when you see the friendship between the two main guys, um,
David and Jack.
David and Jack, played by Griffin Dunn and uh, shoot,
David
David.
Naughton.
Sorry, my brain is
It's kind
I'm going right out of it. Thank you, Chris. I appreciate. See, that's another reason why I appreciate Chris being here because when stuff goes out of my brain, he's there to kind of help me remember. So you can almost believe that those two were really friends, and
yeah,
they probably were friendly on the set. I've never heard that they had disagreements with each other or anything, but I could almost believe for the full length of this film, even after Jack's character is dead and he keeps coming back to David in various stages of decomposition, and even that is funny. I'm
yeah.
sorry, but it's funny because
It's it's one of the best parts of the film, honestly. Like, well, different. They're all different parts, but it's one. I guess one of the best things that's a kind of a continuing, almost like a running joke.
Mhm.
Because he's dead, but he's presenting himself in the from the afterlife to David, and he's showing that he's going through. And every time he appears to David, he's going through a different stage of decomposing. And like that last stage where he's just basically just like a skeleton, and it's like it's just all stuff. It's hilarious. I love it.
And he's still sitting there talking in Griffin Dunn's voice, and it's
Yeah.
just so funny.
And I've met David Naughton on a couple different occasions. I met him for the first time like several years ago at a Friday Night Film Fest in Louisville. Um, and I met him again let's see, was it last year? Because it was in where was that at? It was at Horror Hound, but I can't remember if it was I think it was in the Indianapolis one. Yeah. The last Indianapolis show that Horror Hound did, they had both David Naughton and Griffin Dunn there together. And so we did, like me and my brother-in-law CJ and my son Noah, we all did the photo op with them. And like the background in the photo op is like the slaughtered lamb.
Oh, cool.
And so it was really, really fun. I think that was one of the first conventions that Griffin Dunn had done in like 20 years or something like that. So he's pretty regular again now on the convention circuit. So if I think, and a friend of mine who is his agent, his name is Dominic Mancini, and he's the one that like helps and get shows booked and stuff now. So like I said, he's bringing him to a lot of different shows. And so if you've not got to meet Griffin Dunn, he's really cool. He's really nice. That Arrow video release, you had the artwork on it, so
Mhm.
that comes with a poster
Yeah.
of the same artwork. And because my brother-in-law has that, and that's actually what he got signed by them at that Horror Hound, was that poster. And that's probably the best American Werewolf in London like poster art I've ever seen.
Yeah.
um, as far as when which I love the original poster, where the original poster is just David and Jack just kind of like looking back towards the moon as they're
Mm,
walking on the moors there. um, but and that's a classic. That's a classic poster. I love that.
it's
But as
it.
far as like any kind of like fan art stuff, that poster for the Arrow video release is beautiful. I love it. um, but but yeah, like I said, if they do conventions together a lot. I know David Naughton, I think, is doing Scarefest this year.
Mhm.
I would think that they would go ahead and get Griffin Dunn as well. If
I want to meet Griffin Dunn really bad because he always seems like he would just be the sweetest guy ever.
he is, and he's really nice. And like I said, if you haven't met him, I highly recommend getting to meet him if you're a fan of him or just a fan of American Werewolf in London in general. Which honestly, that's the only, I think, off the top of my head, that's the only thing I can think of that I know him from. I don't know if I've seen many other films with Griffin Dunn. But even if that was the only film that I ever knew, he does such an amazing job as Jack. I
I
mean,
know, I know. Sorry to interrupt you there, Chris.
sure.
But I know that Griffin Dunn is on My Girl. He's the teacher that
See, I
uh,
haven't seen My Girl in like almost 30 years, Dana. So
Veda is. He's the teacher that Veda is in love with.
see, I can't remember a whole lot. I remember, the bee scene with Macaulay Culkin. I remember like the funeral scene when she's like, he gotta have his glasses, and I think Dan Aykroyd doesn't play the dad in
Yeah,
that.
he plays Veda's dad, and Jamie
Uh,
Lee Curtis becomes
yeah,
her
see,
stepmom.
that shows. I need to revisit My Girl here sometime soon. Like I said, I've probably not watched it since I was a kid. That's been about 30 years ago or something.
And Griffin Dunn is also in After Hours, which I have a Criterion release of After Hours. I just haven't watched it
I've
yet, but
never seen that one. So.
I need to really, really soon. Um, but the camaraderie between Jack and David in the film is it's just so natural. And I'm going to use the F word here because it's in one of my favorite exchanges between the two. So please forgive me. But they're talking about a woman named Debbie Klein, who Jack is just enamored of. He keeps talking about her body, he keeps talking about, and they're supposed to go from northern England to Italy a little bit later. They're traveling different places supposedly. And evidently Jack thinks that Debbie Klein is going to meet him in Rome. And he asks David, he says, "Do you think Debbie's going to meet me in Rome?" And he says, "Jack, she's a jerk." He says, "I think Debbie Klein is a mediocre person with a nice body." And Jack says, "There's nothing mediocre about that body." Can you imagine two young men talking about a woman? That would be the exact kind of conversation they would have. And he calls her a jerk or something. And Jack says, "Hey, you're talking about the woman I love." And David looks at him. He says, "We're talking about a woman you want to fuck, okay?" So that whole conversation is just like I said. It's natural. It's funny. It it makes you. It eases you into the film before the first werewolf attack. Is what it does. It shows you the friendship between these two guys, and you believe that those two guys are really friends, that Jack and David have been friends for years. Because they even say, "How long have we known Debbie Klein? Since the eighth grade?" So you figure that these guys have known each other since kindergarten or something, that they grew up together.
Right.
So, I mean, Chris, you tell me, you're a guy. When let's say before you and Candace got married, back when you were playing the field, if you were talking to one of your guy friends about a woman that you thought was hot, wouldn't you have similar conversations with them? Isn't that how guys
I mean,
talk?
that's typically like how guy conversations go. Like, like I said, when I get some of my other guy friends, we can be vulgar. We could tell, stupid stories, stuff we've done in the past, stuff that we wouldn't typically talk about in other conversations, other than just strangers or whatever.
Right.
Um, and or something you wouldn't even talk about with really your significant other. It's just
Right.
stuff like um like you talk about a woman or something like or whatever, like say, oh, she's hot, or or something like that. So like nowadays, it's hard for me to even like think of it, because that's not even a thought in my mind or anything. Like,
Yeah.
I think I the only time I look at other women as being attractive or anything like this, if it's a celebrity or something. And Candace is the same way,
Oh, yeah.
because she likes her male celebrities and stuff too, and that's works a little bit different. But just like, when you find somebody that you really, truly care about and stuff, and you love them, all that other stuff that you thought before when you're playing the field or whatever,
Mhm.
that stuff goes out the window, and you don't care.
Unless you're immature, unless you're a guy that's
Yeah,
immature.
well, I'm not saying that's just me personally, but there, yeah, there's some guys out there that just, are assholes. Let's just be, blunt about it. That just they're too focused on themselves, and they're narcissistic. They just
And
think
they
that
just wanna play the field forever. They might be with somebody, they might be married to somebody, but they still wanna play the field.
right. But yeah, like I get what you're saying though. Like that conversation between David and Jack, that's typical, just like guy banter. Just as I call it, bullshit.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. Or it's, the one that got away stories, fish stories is what this is. Because a lot of times, and women will do this too. I'm not just saying just guys do this, and Chris probably knows what I'm talking about here. Guys will elaborate, and women will elaborate. They will embellish. They will make a fish story into a Moby Dick story. You know what
mhm.
I mean? The fish might be a little bass fish or a crappie fish, and they turn it into a whale. I call a whale. I caught this big whopper of a fish instead of
I know people that do that, both men and women alike. But personally, I've never been a fan of doing that.
yeah.
I just um I've never cared for like taking a story and exaggerating it, or making it bigger than what it was. And maybe that makes me boring. I don't know, but I just
I, honestly, I don't know what purpose it serves except to boost your own ego.
yeah,
To
exactly.
tell a
Like,
story like
because that's how a lot of guy conversations I've noticed are, at least on, like, if you see them in movies or TV or something, like they'll like one will tell a story about, like, say, yeah, I was going out there fishing, and like, me tell you, and I brought in a 10-footer. And then the other guy will be like, well, I could beat that, buddy. I was fishing one day and I brought out a 20-footer. So, well, that was just that day, man. I got that 10-footer, but I've even got a 30-footer. And it just gets more and more and more crazy. I'm not saying that's like any story, because that's very unrealistic.
right.
But you know what I'm saying? Like, it's it's a it's a competitive thing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's there's I'm sure there's women that are like that too, but
Oh,
I know a lot of guys that are like that. I've seen it, and it's just been so comical to me throughout my life. And when I hear people having these conversations, I'm like, I said, both them guys are just friggin' full of shit, you know. And so
I mean, I'm not trying to be crude here, but to me, at least when guys do it, to me, it's the equivalent of all these guys getting out a yardstick and doing a dick measuring contest. I mean,
yeah, that's
clearly.
that's a good way of putting it. Yeah.
And again, I'm not trying to be crude or embarrass anybody or anything, but to me, that's what it is. So we get a lot of that camaraderie between the two, even after Jack is dead and he keeps coming back. And I think the comedy gets into high gear after Jack is dead, because when David gets with Jenny Aguilar's character of the nurse, and he's staying at
Mhm.
her flat, and you know, they have sex and they're in the shower together, and you have that whole you know, collage of scenes. After that, there's the scene where David is in the bathroom, and when he's looking in the mirror in the bathroom that something's going to happen. If you've seen any number of these types of movies, you know that somebody is going to show up behind him in that mirror. Okay. So when he closes the door that the mirror's on, who is behind him but Jack in
Mhm.
one of his early stages of decomposition. And he's got that, and I've heard Griffin Dunn and David Naughton talk about this, that it was so depressing. They said Griffin Dunn was even depressed himself. There is a little piece of latex that's supposed to be skin that in that whole group of scenes is just jiggling all the time. It's just hanging there and jiggling as Jack is talking. And if you don't believe me, go back and watch American Werewolf.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about too, and like there's and I'm glad you brought that up because there is actually a scene that was cut from the movie. And John Landis has went on record saying later on that he wished that he had not cut that from the film. But there is a scene where Jack, as he's decomposing, like later in the film, and he's eating like a piece of toast or something, and that piece of toast is just falling
Yeah,
out of his
yeah,
throat.
exactly. Yeah.
And I've only heard about that. I've read about it, but I don't know if that footage actually exists.
Mhm.
I'm sure it does exist because it was cut from the film,
Yeah.
but I don't. If it's in like a deleted scene or anything, I've never seen it. I'm gonna actually probably look for that after this.
Yeah, so that makes me wanna go back and look too because I don't recall either, but I do remember, John Landis talking about it, other people talking about
Mhm.
it, and it would have been a really great scene. I wish he had left it in there as
Right.
well. Um, but actually, the first time he sees Jack is when he's still in the hospital. But I believe the second time he sees Jack, he's decomposed just a little bit more.
Yeah.
That's in Alex Jenny Aguilar's character's flat, and he goes when he sees Jack behind him, and it's startling to him. It's startling to us watching the film, especially if you're watching the film from the first time. But the part that always makes me laugh is when they're sitting in the dark room and they're talking back and forth in the flat, and he picks up Jack picks up the Mickey Mouse and he goes, and he says, "Put that down." I just find that so funny. I don't know why, but it's so
That reminds me of these two guys that was at that horror hound where I met David Naughton and Griffin Dunn together. There was two guys walking around in cosplay as David and Jack. And I mean, they look. I've probably got a picture of them somewhere on my Facebook that I took of them, but they looked absolutely awesome. I mean, spot on to like with the big puffy jackets and everything from the beginning of the film, and like, and even the guy that was dressed up as Jack had carried around a little Mickey Mouse. Um,
it's
I
funny.
was like, man, they really paid a lot of attention to
Yeah,
detail on that.
yeah, they did.
Um, but talking about all this stuff with Jack though, and how he's like decomposing and everything throughout the film, um, and just not just that, but just all of the nightmare sequences that David's having, and all this. If this movie almost feels like an acid trip in certain
Yeah,
times of the film, and you know it makes me wonder, like, if John Landis was doing drugs when they were making this, because I
yeah,
know
could
that's
have
nothing out of the ordinary for him,
been.
because that's something that he did do, that he was, that was very common for him. So, but because some of the sequences they come out of left field, everything could be going like crazy, and I know that what that if you interpret that what it is just because he's going through this stages of becoming this werewolf, and these are just all the signs. But at the same time, if you can look at that as like, well, you know, the filmmakers were probably on drugs when they because of everything. Just
What's
kind of
not acid between
it
these
could go
things?
from being like something ordinary is happening to just like
Yeah.
absolutely less chaos and madness.
Mhm.
And like the one of the I think one of the more popular scenes from that, other than the transformation that David goes through, um, is the nightmare sequence when it's got the Nazi werewolves
So,
coming in
yeah, the
there.
Nazi werewolf scene, that's scary.
It is.
I'm sorry, but that's freaking scary.
And that just goes to show like how amazing Rick Baker was when it came to effects. Because it's not only is that scary, it's scary when you're seeing David transform for the first time,
Yeah,
because it goes through like this very like um distinguished metamorphosis. And
very
like
painful looking
and
memoir.
yeah, and it's just like wow, like I've seen a lot of different werewolf transformations through the years of watching films, but that's definitely got to be the best one.
That
It,
is for me, it's the absolute top of the heap best werewolf transformation I have ever seen on film.
yeah, I don't think anything could ever top that. And that movie came out, um, almost 50 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been what has it been now since so 81 to so that's what it's been like 43 years, 44 years. I
Mhm.
think 43. Okay. So, I mean, that's crazy. Like that amount of time. And there's been a ton of werewolf films that's come out since 1981.
Yeah.
And I have not seen one yet that has topped that transformation scene.
Me either.
And I believe it's still the only um, werewolf film that got an Oscar for the best makeup. Um, and that in itself is something.
And here's something else, and I've heard Rick Baker talk about this, and the fact that he was concerned about this at the time was that John Landis wanted that werewolf transformation scene, the first transformation, full transformation of David into the werewolf. He wanted that in harsh, bright light. That had Rick Baker worried because he said traditionally, when there were werewolf transformation scenes, you had to worry about would there a zipper be shown? Would
Right.
something be shown? And that was when they were in darkness or in partial darkness. John Landis wanted this in completely bright light, and it is. It is in the brightest light possible. And honestly, I've seen that werewolf transformation scene many, many times. I cannot see a seam, a zipper, nothing. And the part that really stands out for me during the transformation scene is when you see the close up of David's face and it pushes out into the
Hmm.
werewolf
Snout.
muzzle, yeah, or snout. Um, I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. Let's run that back. Let's put it in slow motion, because that is so incredible. I
It
can
is. It's
believe that the actor is turning into a wolf at that point.
and it's yeah, it's so impressive to this day. It holds up, and um to the point where I'm ready to show. I'm excited to show that film to Noah.
Mm.
Because I want to see how he reacts to that scene particularly.
I bet
Um,
he's going to get excited about it, knowing Noah.
and I'm and not just to focus in on the transformation scene, but like the the final stage of him as you see the him as the werewolf at the end of the film. That too is one of the best looking werewolves like
Oh,
creatures in all of werewolf films that have been. Um, and it's just it's so different looking because a lot of the werewolves that we see in films is like they're usually like a standing humanoid version of the
Yeah.
werewolf. You know, you see that with the original Wolfman, Lon Chaney. You see that as in The Howling, and you see that like the werewolves and dog soldiers, or the one of the ones that I can think of that was much like the on all fours werewolf from American Werewolf in London is my favorite, Ginger Snaps. So when Ginger in Ginger Snaps, and sorry if you've never seen Ginger Snaps, but it's called Ginger Snaps because the character Ginger does turn into a werewolf, but she is on all fours as well when she goes into the final transformation as
Yeah.
of the werewolf. So, and I always seen that as kind of a tribute to American Werewolf in London.
Mhm.
Um, and I just and I can't go into full detail right now why Ginger Snaps is my favorite werewolf film of all time, but it doesn't have a lot to do with some of the cast members. Catherine Isabel, I'm a big fan of her, so
Uh,
she played a huge part in that being my favorite.
well, I think other, well, probably women too, but a lot of guys are a fan of her and her work too, because she is a striking young woman. You know, she is.
And I liked her in everything that I've seen. You know, American Mary. You know, she has a small part in Freddy versus Jason.
Yeah,
She has a in the second season of Supernatural. She kind of has like a semi-regular part. It's a really cool character too. Um, and you know, she's just been in several things. You know that, but like I don't want me to get off on like Catherine Isabel and Ginger Snaps and stuff, but like this is
that's
when
okay.
I start talking about stuff, no matter what it is, it like branches off in all these different ways. So
That's okay because you know what, Chris? It's been over a year ago. I did a favorite werewolf films stream
mm,
on my channel,
yeah, I
and
think it's your most popular video
I
too. I
think
think
that is my most popular video. It I don't know what I don't know what happened with that, but I looked at the views. I think there at last count there were 26,000 views on that thing.
Well, I think what it is that appeals to a lot of people. I know for me personally, I love watching stuff like countdown lists and stuff like that. And I think a lot of people like to watch that stuff just because, because they want to see where their favorite is on the list, or they want to learn about movies that they didn't know about. And I think the werewolf like subgenre in horror is very popular. I think it's universally loved by most horror fans. I can't really name anybody that I've met in the past that didn't like werewolves in horror films, because it's just that's one of the original like classic tropes of horror is starting with the wolf man, and I feel like that's what really made that subgenre popular was that, um, because we always when it comes to the whole typical transformations and everything, they always draw back to the original the Wolfman. And if you and not horror but the Wolfman related, if you've seen The Sandlot, the movie The Sandlot with the dog that's next door, which is the Beast. At
Yeah,
the end of the film, when Beast is chasing Benny throughout the town, they run through the local theater where the people in there are watching the Wolfman,
yeah,
and then it like lays parallel to what's going on with Benny and the Beast,
exactly.
because he talks about getting it shows the scene where the gypsy is talking to Larry Talbot in the film about him being bitten by the wolf, and then like Benny actually after that gets bitten by the beast.
Mhm, mhm.
So yeah,
Well, that made me think of It too. There's a scene in the It miniseries, the original It miniseries, where the kids are watching. I was a teenage werewolf with Michael Landon,
yeah.
and when you said that about the Sandlot, it reminded me of that scene as well. And
Because if after they watch that movie and it, then like Pennywise appears to Richie as the teenage werewolf.
yes, he does. Yeah.
So yeah, yeah, there's a lot of stuff that, like I said, you can all tie that stuff to, like with American Werewolf in London or any of these other werewolf films. It's all tied back to the original Wolfman,
Mhm.
in some form or fashion. Um, but like I said, sorry, getting off another tangent.
Oh, no, that's
Uh,
okay. I love doing this because it just, I think it adds a little bit of spice into these streams if we go off topic here and there, but kind of stay on topic because we're still talking about a werewolf film.
yeah,
We're talking about how John Landis and some of these other guys, they kind of paved the way. We had the classic werewolf stuff.
yeah.
And then by the 80s, we had John Landis doing American Werewolf in London. We had Joe Dante doing The Howling. And then it just kept, it kept going from there. You had Silver Bullet in the mid 80s, and it just went on and on.
Well, and you had the Wolfman and a lot of the Universal like Wolfman films where he was either he's in Abbott Costello Meet Frankenstein or he was in like Frankenstein versus Wolfman. There's a lot of different werewolf films in the 40s through the 60s, but then if you notice there for a while, like aside from like maybe the Paul Nashy werewolf films and a few others here and there, the subgenre kind of died out for a little bit.
Mhm.
And then I feel like, when American Werewolf in London came out in 81 and then The Howling came out in that same year, it kind of reignited that fire, in people's like, fandom for those werewolf films
Yeah.
because, American Werewolf in London is to this day one of the top biggest werewolf films in history.
Yeah.
Uh, I mean, if you're looking at it from an unbiased perspective, it's possibly the greatest that's ever been made. But that's always debatable as well. Not everyone will agree with that.
Yeah.
It's not my favorite of all time, but I feel like it's probably the most well known.
Yeah.
Uh, some and some people will say, well, the Wolfman is probably the most well known. Well, to agree, but you got to look at like if it's not, the American Werewolf London is right up there with it. Um,
Yeah.
so I mean that's just my point of view on it.
And I agree. I agree with that. So Chris, is there anything else you want to bring up about American Werewolf in London before we give our
Um,
ratings on it? I just
Again,
wanted to give you an ample opportunity to talk
like I
about.
said with Blues Brothers, if you've not seen it, why? Why not? Why go watch American Werewolf in London? Even if you have multiple times, like me and Dana, go watch it again because
Yeah,
it. And I tell you, no matter how many times you watch that movie, it always holds up. It always it doesn't lose any fun about it. It doesn't lose any my interest at all. I feel like it's always a good movie just to put on. Like even if you just need something for background noise or something, or if you're working around the house, because I do that a lot. Like if I'm doing stuff around the house, I'll have something playing on the TV or on my phone or something,
yeah,
whether it be a movie or TV show. And I usually only do that with stuff that I have seen like multiple times, just so I can have it as background noise. I do that with Creep Show a lot. Like Creep Show was kind of one of my go-to films when I'm bored or I'm feeling bad or something.
yeah,
Uh, I love Creep Show, and I love pretty much anything like horror anthology related. Uh,
right.
but yeah, definitely check out American Werewolf in London if you've never seen it. Watch it again if you have seen it. Go to convention, meet David Naughton and Griffin Dunn.
Yeah,
Just um, you know, project your passion for this stuff. I guess most importantly is that's how I am. I think that's how Dana is that's why Dana does this. That's why she does these streams, because she's just projecting her passion. And I think for me at least, when I'm doing that, when I get heavily involved in something that I'm passionate about, like these movies, um, it makes me feel better ultimately.
yeah. Yeah.
about if I'm having a bad day or something. It makes things away. Like in the beginning of this stream, I wasn't feeling that great, because I've not been feeling great all day. But as we went, thoroughly into talking about these movies and stuff, I'm not even giving that a thought, because it's like, what we're talking about, it puts my mind in that state to where, like, I'm in a good mood. I feel good about talking about this stuff, and that's how it should be, like, so, like, that's my Dr. Phil advice for today.
And Chris is definitely better at giving advice than Dr. Phil is. I'll tell you much. Uh, but before we give our rating on this one, I wanted to read through some of the comments. Blissful says she learns things, I guess when we go out on tangents and
Oh yeah.
talk about different things.
Well, that's a good way of learning things.
She says, "Now I want to have a werewolf marathon." Yeah, that's a cool idea. And Ginger's in here. Hey, Ginger. And Ginger says she loves that movie, and I'm assuming she's talking about American Werewolf in London. And I just hit myself in the lip with that. So hopefully
Or
not.
she could be talking about ginger snaps.
Ginger snaps too. Yeah, it's one or the other. I forgot about that. Yeah. Um, Blissful says American Werewolf in London was the first horror movie I snuck in and watched. That is a great story, Blissful, because I
That's
would love to be able to say that I had done
that
it.
that would be a really good topic too, is what was the first horror film that you had to sneak and watch, or the first one you can remember?
See, I probably, because that could go two ways. That could go, maybe your parents didn't want you to watch something and you kind of snuck and watched it, or you had to sneak into the theater and had to bypass some of the ticket takers or something you know. Uh, and I don't think I ever ran into that from either my parents or, a theater. Because by the time I was going to see the types of movies that you have to be old enough to see at the
Mhm.
theater, I was of age. Now I didn't look it for a long time. I'm starting to get more gray in my hair. I'm starting to look my age now, but I was in my when I was 21 years old or 21 to 23 or whatever, and even into my 30s, people thought that I was underage to be either renting rated R movies, and I'm like, really? Y'all think I'm that young? And mom said, believe me, Dana, you'll enjoy that the older you get when people think you're younger. Um,
The first one I can remember, like, because there was several movies I didn't have to sneak and watch, like the Friday the 13th movies, or the Nightmare on Elm Street, or the Halloween films, or Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Because, like I said, my dad was watching a lot of that stuff and just let me watch them with him. And same thing with my brother too, because I was, I think I watched the Nightmare on Elm Street films for the first time with my brother because he was like, you know, so I didn't really sneak and watch them, but I think he was like sneaking and let me watch them with him. My mom didn't really care for it because my mom's never really been a big horror movie person.
mhm.
But the first one I can think of that I snuck and watched on my own was, and it was basically just out of a rebellion thing, I guess, because my mom didn't want me watching this movie for some reason, and I was just curious. I was like, why can't I watch this movie? And now, as I'm a parent, I understand why she didn't really want me watching it at such a young age, and that's Pet Cemetery. Um,
Uh-huh.
and I do remember sneaking and watching that, and like, I remember even at a young age watching that, it really bothered me when Gage gets ran over by the truck and everything, and just and how that develops throughout that film.
Zelda scared the shit out of me. That's what
That
scared
too, I think that was a big thing for a lot of people, I think, Candace included.
me.
Uh, but I don't know, like seeing a gauge as a baby. Just like, I didn't understand this as a kid, because like I was a lot when you're at a certain age as a kid, a lot of stuff is still feels real to you, even though you're just watching a movie or something, whatever it is. Like, most people as adults stuff know that that's just scripted and fake, and they're just movies. But sometimes when you're a little kid, depending on how young you are, your mind's still developing, and you can't process that. Like, you just look at it as just like something that's real. And that's why I was so afraid of like horror films at a very young age. And I thought Freddy Krueger was real. I thought Jason was real. Stuff like, I used to think Freddy Krueger lived under my bed.
Oh, now that's scary. I don't think I'd be wanting to think about him being there in my bed.
And it's just stuff like that when you see it. Because, like I said, when I seen Gage, that little kid in the movie, and because we were talking about that when we did the New Nightmare watch along, like how just from that age, like Miko Hughes was an amazing, child actor. I mean, amazing, did an amazing job in Pet Sematary, and when me seeing that as a kid, I'm like, that scared me more than anything. Here this kid ran out, got killed by this truck, and then he comes back and he cut open Herman Munster's mouth, and then
Yeah, right.
and I'm like, yeah.
He
It,
took Herman Munster out. That's
it did some damage to me there for a while, but the more I got older and watched it more and more and more and stuff, I like. It wasn't until probably like the mid '90s when I really started getting heavy involved into the horror genre and becoming the fan that I am now. And a lot of that has to do with Joe Bob Briggs and Monster Vision.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think a lot of people that grew up during that time period and Joe Bob's heyday and stuff like that can say that probably if they had gotten into horror movies, Joe Bob was the one that got them really, really into it. Because I was already into horror movies because my parents were both. I think my mom, you would call her a fan of horror movies. My dad, he liked some of them, but he was kinda going along for the ride. He wasn't as big a fan as my mom was. And so, I say I get my love of horror films honest because I get it from my mom. My mom, as a kid, would put those wax vampire teeth in or even the plastic vampire teeth, and she'd run around and chase her younger sister saying, "I want to suck your blood," and she'd make them scream and run away from her. I mean, that's what my mom did, and I grew up practically the same way as my mom did, with that just that love of all things horror. Now, my mom has moved away from that as she's gotten older. She doesn't watch the slasher films and stuff like that anymore. She doesn't watch the Friday the 13th. She never was a real big fan of Nightmare on Elm Street, Freddy Krueger, all that. Um, and not a huge fan of Halloween. She would watch some of them, but um, so I grew up with that already being seeded. That love of horror was already there. Um, and I also remember my parents as a kid taking me to a few horror films at the drive-in. And I remember the beginning of prom night, for instance, where young Robin falls out the window to her death. That's something that stuck with me from the time I was a kid till now. Uh,
Apparently, my first movie I ever saw, which I don't remember seeing it because I think I was just a few months old, but this is just the story that my mom tells me. She said she said technically the first movie that you ever saw was a horror film, and it was at the drive-in. Like I said, I was probably just a few months old, and I have no memory of this, but apparently it was Jaws: The Revenge. which
Oh,
is
goodness.
seen to a lot of people as the worst Jaws film in the series.
We'll
Uh,
find some fun in watching it, though.
but that's always been a story I've told people. Like when people say, "Well, what's the first horror film you ever seen?" I'm like, "Well, I don't remember it, but the first one technically was Jaws of Revenge." But do you remember the first horror film did you remember seeing, Dana?
The first one that, oh, goodness. I'm gonna say probably I don't remember the exact one, but let me take y'all back to when I was a kid growing up in my itty bitty small town, actually growing up in the sticks because my parents' house was way out in the boonies, you know. Um, so I grew up watching a lot of different types of movies on television first. And so the stuff that I remember being horror films and that sticks out in my mind as stuff that I watched at the beginning of my horror watching career was we had a channel called Channel 44, Fox 44 in my neck of the woods. And what this channel would do generally around Halloween time, like a week or two before Halloween, they would show a week's worth of movies, and I absolutely loved it because they were horror movies. So the first stuff I remember watching was stuff like Friday the 13th Part 3, Halloween 2. I don't never remember on Fox 44 showing the first Halloween. And I don't remember them showing the first Friday the 13th, but they would show Friday the 13th Part 3. They show Halloween 2. I remember them showing Firestarter, Silver Bullet. So those are some of the first horror movies that I really remember watching, albeit in a truncated form because they were on television. But I can tell you the first horror film I ever watched after we got a VCR, and that was Witchboard. That was
Hmm.
Kevin Tenney's Witchboard. I remember that clearly, like it was yesterday.
I wish that I could remember what the first one remember seeing, because just my memory now from that time when I started watching those movies with my brother or my dad or whatever, it just all blends together.
Mhm.
And so, if I had to guess, it has to be one of the Nightmare on Elm Street or one of the Friday the 13th, because if I think hard enough, my earliest memories are those films. I was a little bit older. My dad showed me um, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre movies or Night of the Living Dead, or just different stuff. But I know one that they always liked was the Nightmare on Elm Street and the Friday the 13th. And back years ago, um, they every time that there was an actual Friday that fell on Friday the 13th, Sci-Fi Channel or one of these channels on TV would show like marathons all the time of the Friday the 13th films, and they would do the same thing, which I think they still to this day do that with not all of the Halloween films, but a few of them on AMC every year. They show, I know they whatever they have rights to, I guess. I know they always show the original Halloween, and they'll show Halloween 4 and 5, and sometimes they'll show like H2O and Resurrection, but
Mm.
that's about it. Like they don't show them all, because I guess it has comes to do with like licensing and rights and everything. Um, but that's something I always do remember very well growing up, is watching Friday the 13th marathons on actual Friday the 13th. And I don't think they. I mean, I know there's a lot of like streaming like services out there that kind of like Pluto TV.
Yeah.
They have like different channels and stuff, and I know that they do stuff like that. They have like their own different horror channels and stuff like that. But I don't know if that's even a thing anymore that we're on Friday the 13th, which we have a Friday the 13th coming up in September, which is
We
the
do.
weekend of Horror Hound.
Yes, it is. And I
So
won't be there till that Saturday, so I may spend Friday the 13th actually watching some Friday the 13th.
well, that sounds good. It's untelling. I know we'll be there all weekend, so I don't. It's untelling what I'll get into that
Maybe
Friday.
you can watch some on the hotel TV or something, Chris.
Maybe I'll try to like because on that Friday I'll probably fighting a way to try to get to Robert Englund autograph if I can because I was talking with somebody about that day and
Mhm.
I'm we'll go back to talking about American Werewolf in London here in a minute but I just want I was talking to someone today about the whole Robert Englund thing
Uh,
and just the way I see it and maybe I'm wrong. If I'm
mhm.
wrong, I'm wrong. That's fine. But so this whole thing with his autograph, like they're going to be offering that to VIPs first and foremost, and they said whatever doesn't sell will go to general mission or whatever, and people can buy those combos. Um, so he's going to be there all 3 days.
Yeah.
And I know he's kind of a talker, and then he's going to have his breaks during the days, and he's got to do photo ops and all that stuff. And he'll probably have to do a panel or two as well at one
And
of the.
he may get there late and leave early, right,
But
Chris?
right, that could be the case too. And but I'm thinking, he's going to be there 3 days, and on the first day, Friday, he'll it will run for about 5 or 6 hours. But part of that time he'll do a photo op uh, session, and then he'll have his breaks and all that. But you know, maybe around like 4 hours worth of that day on Friday, he'll be possibly signing.
Mhm.
I mean, and that's the thing that it's kind of unpredictable with
Right.
is like because you don't know how long he's going to talk to each person. But I'm thinking if they work this right and they're like, well, they kind of rush him along, maybe do like 2 to 3 minutes per fan, he's still going to be doing quite a few within just 1 hour. Uh,
Right.
and then I would estimate probably anywhere from between 400 and 500 fans over the
Mhm.
course of the whole weekend. He'll probably meet if that's if we're lucky. But you know, who's to say that just because you have VIP that they're the people that has the VIP are going to want to meet Robert Englund?
That was my thinking too, Chris. I've been doing a lot of thinking about that, and I was like, how many of those VIPs have already met Robert England? Or
Because I
maybe
know
met him multiple times?
aside from him, because he is the main guest at this show coming up. But I know there's a lot of people going to be there, especially a lot of younger people that are going to be there for that Scream reunion thing they're doing too. I
Mhm.
know they just put the photo up for the whole group. It's like
Yep.
it's 6 different cast members, and it's like almost $400 for the photo op. And I'm sure there's going to be some people out there that buys those. I'm not one of them, but
Either.
because with although I do like the newer Scream films, I don't like them enough to go and pay that much money for that photo op with all those because while I think those people that are involved in that are they're really great actors and actresses and all that.
Mhm.
They're just not. They don't appeal to me as much, say Robert Englund or some of the slasher fest guests that they have at this horror hound,
Mhm.
or like um, the Night of the Creeps reunion they're doing.
Yeah.
I'm an old school guy. I mean, I'm not going. I mean, I can't front about it. When it comes to horror, my main forte is the old school stuff. And as far as dating back all the way to the classic Universal monsters, but like once it gets past the '90s.
Mhm.
Going into like the 2000s, I do like a lot of stuff from the 2000s,
Yeah.
but my main appeal is like from there back, Like I still like there's a lot of amazing horror films that have come out since in the 2000s, 2010s, 2020s. But if I'm ever making like my favorite horror films list, well, there's not many like newer films that I'm going to put at the top of those lists.
Right.
Um, but I know that just that's different for all different generations of fans. And that's the point I'm getting to is like, a lot of the younger fans, whether it be teenagers now or people in their early 20s, that are just getting into the fandom of the horror genre, uh, those newer Scream films may have been the reason that they got into the genre. That may
Right.
be the reason why they're a fan now and they're checking out other stuff. So and I look at that as a positive in every sense. That whatever it is that's helping you get into the fandom of horror,
Hmm.
I'm all for it. Doesn't matter what. I don't care if it's the Nightmare on Elm Street remake. If that's what if that's what is drawing you to become a fan of horror, that's
Hmm.
awesome.
Yeah.
So but I guess what I'm just trying to say is that that's just not for me. But it will be something for someone else.
Yeah, I agree again. Me and Chris, just like me and Candace, I think we're on the same wavelength a lot of times. We have, a few differences here and there. But I agree with everything that Chris just said. Um, and we're going to go ahead and give our ratings on American Werewolf in London. And then I'm going to read through because I'm seeing the return of 19 Gardens. And I'm seeing Tom Baker, who's new, who said great thumbnails. I'm not sure if he's talking about the thumbnails I do for these streams or
Yeah, I
if
think
he's,
that's what you're talking about.
but thank you. If that's what you're talking about, I appreciate that. Um, but I'm going to go ahead and give my rating. Now I'm going to read through a few of these chat messages, and then me and Chris are going to get to this last thing, but probably won't take us very long because it is a trailer compilation and not a movie. So, once again, I'm going to have to give American Werewolf in London 5 deadites out of 5 because fantastic makeup effects by Rick Baker. Um, Fantastic acting on the part of David Naughton and Griffin Dunn, and fantastic direction by Mr. John Landis, who did everything perfect in this movie. And you can't talk me out of it. You can try to talk me out of it, but it's not going to work. And you can have a different opinion. That is perfectly fine. But I don't think my opinion will ever change about American Werewolf in London. It is a fantastic werewolf film, and I will continue to watch it for years to come. So I'm going to turn it over to Chris to give his rating.
So I don't do this very often, like I said, and the Blues Brothers was only the second
Mhm.
5 deadites out of 5 that I have given. The first was Sleepaway Camp,
Yep.
and then but so this would be very rare here is that I'm within the same stream. I'm giving another 5 out of 5 for American Werewolf in London. And it just took John Landis to bring us together for me to give as controversial as John Landis is. I mean, he puts on stellar movies.
Yeah.
If I'm ranking, all of his films in one sitting, I'm gonna put Blues Brothers as 5 out of 5. American Werewolf in London, 5 out of 5. I want to put Trading Places.
Mhm.
If you want to throw the Thriller music video in there, I give that a 5. I mean, I know there's some controversy surrounding him and everything, and there's even some fans out there that don't like him anymore because of just stuff that happens surrounding Twilight Zone.
Mhm.
And that's your prerogative. That's what if that's how you feel about it, that's fine.
Right.
But you I feel like if you can't deny, you cannot deny this man's skill as a filmmaker, though, and what he brings to the
Exactly.
table. Because that, I just feel like, you cannot like the man, but you gotta respect for what he's done. You don't have to respect. I'm sure you don't have to respect the decisions that were made during Twilight Zone, but
Right.
you gotta. But what I'm saying is that you have to respect what this man has done for all these different film genres. Um,
I totally agree with that, Chris, because you make a very important and very valid point. Is you, no matter the mistakes this man has made in his past, as tragic as some of those mistakes turned out to be, you cannot deny that John Landis is one of the most incredible filmmakers of our time.
yeah, he's
And
very influential as
you're not
well.
going to talk me out of that, no matter.
I heard mistakes and I thought it was calling about me.
Not a mistake, Steve.
Just not any mistake. We should have never got this one.
Oh, yes, we should have. She's my baby. Um, I got 5 babies, so but and there's one of Chris's babies there. Hey, Ghost. He reminds me so much of my Reggie. Um,
But does Reggie shed all over you as soon as he touches you?
no, he doesn't do that. Reggie doesn't shed a whole lot.
He just like jumped. Ghost just jumped up on me for like just a second there, and like he's already. I have hair all over my leg now.
Now,
He's
I
like,
have other dogs that do that. The Basset Hounds are real bad about that, getting
he
hair on.
sheds very, very badly.
So I was going to read through a few of these chat messages that I missed while we were talking. I just want to acknowledge a few things, and then we're going to talk about coming soon before we get off of here for the night. So I got to read what Ginger put here. She said, I had a Freddy Krueger dream after watching that movie at the theater. And in my dream, I told Freddy to make me a sandwich with his knife's hand, and he did. That was a great dream. Um, I think actually, speaking of that, I think something that Chris sent to me had Freddie or Robert England rather with the Freddie glove talking about if Freddie would be great at parties because he could make kebabs and all that stuff. That's what that reminded me of when Ginger was talking.
Oh, was it the interview that he did with those like kids or
I
whatever?
think so. Yeah, I'm pretty
I
sure.
want to say that was on like an early thing in Nickelodeon, maybe in the late '80s Nickelodeon.
Yeah,
That was on. Yeah, I forgot about sending that to you.
yeah, I loved that. I sat there and watched it and just was loving the whole thing. Um, Ginger says, if I met Robert England, I would ask if he'd make me a sandwich. Probably if he had time, he probably would. But 19 Garden said, I dreamed of Freddie once. It was pretty bad. Now, that's not the kind of dreams that we want to have. We would rather have the dreams like Ginger did. Um,
That was a big thing. Like I said earlier, I used to think that Freddy Krueger lived under my bed, and and like when it was late at night and I was like in bed, like trying to go to sleep or something, I was terrified to get out with the lights off. I was terrified to get up out of my bed until morning
yeah,
because I had this constant fear and thought in my head that as soon as I stepped onto the floor out of my bed, that I was going to be dragged underneath it by Freddy, and I would have nightmares about that. Um, it's a wonder that I turned out all right.
well, I got a story. I just want to tell this story real quick because it's a wonder my cousin Jed is not completely traumatized because he loves horror movies too, just like I do. And but when he was a kid, he had a sadistic babysitter at one time who would lock him in the closet, but also forced him to watch Nightmare on Elm Street before he was ready mentally to watch that, you know, or emotionally or whatever you want to say. And I think it took Jed a while before he could actually watch a Nightmare on Elm Street film all the way through. Now he likes them, but that scarred him for a long time. So you babysitters or future babysitters out there, don't do that to kids. Please don't do that to kids.
That's what, Candace's aunt Crystal, which Candace calls her sissy.
Hmm.
See, Candace stayed with her. I've heard these stories plenty of times from Candace that she used to stay with Crystal growing up, and Crystal would do that. Like when she was babysitting Candace, she would always just put on horror films and stuff like that for them to watch. And I guess that's pretty much how Candace got into it.
Yeah, I think I remember Candace telling me that story too. Um, so Tom says he likes all the thumbnails. So thank you. And Ginger, thank you for saying I create awesome thumbnails. It's a combination usually of AI and Photoshop. Now this particular one for the Lanus Confidential was pretty much a combination of things I put together, different elements I took from different places to put this together. Um, Blissful says, "Cough, cough, half deadite cough." Yeah, I still do need to make that half deadite. I promise it's coming, guys and gals. Um, let's see. Blissful says she feels if you stop watching John Landis's films, you're missing out on so much. Yes, yes, you are. Yes,
Well,
the dogs do give Ninja Steve away to Blissful.
but going to to Blissful's comment about that, I mean, you have to. You have to. I mean, unless you're just so stubborn in your ways that you can't allow yourself to. Which I
Hmm.
understand that too. That's some people are so set in their ways they just can't. They can't do something.
Yeah,
Uh, you know, no matter what it is, and um but and you can't, and it's not going to help trying to force them to see it any other way than what their own way. Sometimes they're beyond that point. Um, but I just feel ultimately, that if you focus on one thing, in this case, a filmmaker, just something they did, during the filming of one of their films, if you like judge them the rest of their stuff that they have put out based off of that, just because they made this personal decision that you might not agree with. um, I don't think that affects the success that they've had on other films, or the how well that film was made, or because they are not the only ones involved in the creating that film. uh, at the same time, if you're like making yourself not watch John Landis's films, you're also depriving yourself of seeing how well these actors, what a good job they do, in these roles in these films, whether it be American Werewolf in London, or Blues Brothers, or Trading Places, or Kentucky Fried Movie, or whatever, you know or just if you're looking just at the Twilight Zone movie, because that whole movie is not just John Landis's movie.
no, it's
That's
not.
an anthology
That's just
film.
one segment, and I believe did he do the wraparound too, Chris?
Uh, I'm not sure about that.
Okay.
Possibly that I'm not sure of.
Hey, Batman. Um, yeah, and Chris again makes some very good points there. Um, being that you cannot judge somebody, and this is my personal opinion on this. I'm not trying to force on anybody. You cannot base your like or dislike of somebody's whole catalog of films on mistakes made on one film.
Right.
And I am not, when I say that, I am not trying to belittle or make light of the tragic circumstances surrounding Twilight Zone, the movie, and John Landis's segment, because there were deaths. There were deaths of 2 young children. There were deaths of Vic Morrow. Those are awful, terrible things. But I've made this point again and again and again. John Landis has to live with that every day of his life, and I'm sure that he does. I know some people have said that Landis didn't care. He didn't give a shit whether anybody lived or died on his movies. I just think that's a cruel and um, just an assumption because somebody is angry that this even happened. But you have to think that I'll get off my soapbox in a minute, I promise. You have to consider, in the grand scheme of things, of all the movies that have ever been made, do you not think that there were tragic circumstances in more movies than just Twilight Zone the movie or television shows? There was a stuntman, a young guy who was on The Burning, and
Oh, is that the guy that was in Airwolf?
yeah, and
Playing
died in
Werewolf?
that helicopter crash. I don't see anybody going around blaming the people that created that Airwolf episode, or even worse, blaming him for his own death, or blaming his dad, who was also a stuntman. So you gotta look at things in perspective. Is the thing that I wanna share with y'all.
Yeah, that's my advice as well. But like I said, there are some people out there that are just beyond trying to get them to see, your perspective or your point of view of it, and because some people are just set in their own ways, and they use, and if you try to force it, then it's only gonna make it worse.
Yep.
Uh,
Yes, it will. And oh, hey, Phil. I wanted to say hi to Phil. I didn't want to miss him in here. Um, let's see. Batman says, Chris, I checked both Super 7 and Big Bad Toy stores, but both were sold out on their return of the
oh
living.
man,
But he says they're a reasonable price on eBay, though.
let me see if I can help you out on that. Hold on a second.
While Chris is doing that, I'll go ahead and get started talking about coming soon, and then we'll have Chris come in after I do that. And when he finds out about these figures, we'll let him talk about that too. But coming soon, as I said earlier, coming soon is not a movie. Coming soon is a collection of trailers. It's a trailer compilation, basically, hosted by Jamie Lee Curtis. Written, I guess the Jamie Lee Curtis segments were written by Mick Garris and John Landis, and the whole enchilada was directed by John Landis. Did you find out something, Chris? I wanted to give you a chance to talk.
I mean, I'm sitting here looking, he said he found them on eBay. It looks like that's probably his best bet right now. Sorry about that, man. Yeah, they were on Big Bad Toy Store and on Super 7, but I guess they just got super popular and they sold out on that.
Chris showed them and it skyrocketed. Everybody,
Yeah, let's go with that. Yeah.
um, but I like trailer compilations because me and Steve have watched several different trailer compilations. He used to get a bunch of these. I'm trying to remember what they were called. I can't remember.
I tell you, I like trailer compilations too. And funny enough, Steve was the one that introduced me to trailer compilations because we were it was during a convention one time, and I think at the time it was just me and Steve and Wes, and we were sitting in the hotel room, and I think Steve had that trailers from Hell DVD, like the Joe Dante's trailers from, and it was just all
Yeah.
it was just a big, huge compilation of all these different movie trailers, and
Mhm.
I was just like zoned in on that. Like I love that because I had never sit and watched like a big long just trailer compilation, trailer after trailer after trailer. I was like, that's really neat. And so then, and now, like nowadays, I do that. Like, I'll look for stuff like that on YouTube just to sit and watch or have as background
Oh,
noise or something. And not just trailer compilation, but I like looking at like old commercial compilations
yeah.
and
Mhm.
just different things like that.
Yeah, it's really I think it's a niche thing, but it's so interesting to me because not only do I get to see some of these classic trailers for movies that I already know of, but the other part of that is usually when you watch trailer compilations, you will come across several films that you've never seen before. And based on that trailer, it will make you want to watch it. Now, there's some of them that I see the trailers, I'm like, good Lord, I never want to see that. But the majority of them that I have not seen, I'm like, man, that looks pretty interesting. And I'll turn to Steve and I'll say, can you download that, Steve? Y'all didn't hear me say that. I said it, but you didn't. Okay. Um, we'll just skate on past that. But that's the best thing I think about trailer compilations is the ability to see trailers for movies that you would be interested in, but that you haven't seen.
Yeah, that's one of the main reasons I watch them is to discover new movies that just seeing like because a lot of those trailers that were like I said I watched when me and Steve and Wes were watching that or whatever. We I saw a lot of different movies that I had never even heard of before,
Yeah.
and it made me like seek out those movies to watch them. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's
And so what made this one a little bit different is that it was shorter at just under an hour than a lot of trailer compilations we watch now. The trailer compilations I've watched in more recent years, you're talking about 3 or 4 hours of trailers. And this was about 54, 56 minutes, something like that. And you had Jamie Lee Curtis in there. She was on I believe she was on the Universal lot. So here's something also to remember, guys and gals. And I saw somebody had made a comment on the video on YouTube that they wondered why they didn't show trailers like for The Exorcist and The Fog. Now, I can't remember about The Fog, but I know that The Exorcist wasn't put out by Universal.
yeah,
The
it's
Exorcist
all
was a
licensing
Warner
and
Brothers.
copyrights has to do with that.
So this was primarily a group of Universal films. And Jamie Lee Curtis started talking about the classic monster films and the classic creature films, the giant spider movies and the giant praying mantis movies, the mole people. Not all of them are going to be classic, right? When you talk about the mole people, that's not, one that you would consider classic. But we got to talk about all the classic movie monsters pretty much the Frankenstein monster, Dracula, the Wolf Man. They even talked about Abbott and Costello, Meet Frankenstein, stuff like that, which Steve really. I knew of Abbott and Costello, but Steve really turned me on to their movies, and they are funny. You want to watch something that'll make you laugh?
Yeah. I don't know if Candace has ever told you, but I love Abbott Costello. Like we have a friend of ours named Marcia who
Mhm.
does like these really like awesome portrait like uh, pictures and stuff that she draws. She's
Mhm.
done a couple for Candace. She's done one of Chris Cornell from Soundgarden for
Mhm.
Candace. She did Freddie Mercury.
Oh,
So she wanted to do one for me, and I said, "Well, can you do Abbott Costello together?" and she did, and we have it up in our living room on the wall. Um, as far as any of the Universal monster films, Abbott Costello Meet Frankenstein is my favorite. I feel like um, Abbott Costello, that was during their comedy was during a time where there was no vulgarity or anything in comedy, and so it was all clean comedy. And like to this day, for me at least, it holds up. It's like the Three Stooges as well, kind of in that same fashion. It's clean comedy and it's still hilarious.
Yeah.
uh, Lucille Ball with I Love Lucy, everything during that era was fantastic. Jerry Lewis and Dean Martin working together as a team was fantastic,
Yeah.
clean comedy. But Abbott Costello, yeah, I mean, like I could go in because I have, loved them for as long as I can remember. And I collect things from them. I have a 2-pack. They're like around 8 or 9 inches tall of
Mm.
Abbott Costello. It's from the famous Abbott Costello skit, "Who's on First?" Which, if
Yeah.
you know anything about Abbott Costello, that's probably their most popular skit that made them, popular amongst so many people. It's the "Who's on First" baseball skit, and then I have the 2-pack of the dolls from that. I have a Abbott Costello "Who's on First" pocket watch.
Mm-hmm.
Um, just different things like that. And yeah, Abbott Costello are fantastic.
Yeah. I would recommend, if you've never seen Abbott and Costello, I would suggest the one that made me laugh the most was Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein, and it just because you had all the monsters in there,
And
basically.
they had that one does, and then there's one where they as Abbott Costello meet Boris Karloff the killer.
Uh,
There's Abbott Costello meet the Invisible Man, or there's one where they meet the Mummy.
yeah,
There's
yeah,
one called Africa Screams. There's like all kinds of different stuff. No, I mean they've done a lot of like spin-off stuff where they did like the horror related things, but there's tons of stuff out there. They have the Abbott Costello Colgate Comedy Hour, which is their like variety show they did. They've done all kinds of different things within the comedy genre. So yeah. But if you're
Well,
looking for just stuff that's like horror related, there's stuff definitely out there. They've done around like 4 or 5 movies that are like horror related. So,
mhm.
but it's comedy horror. It was kind of like the beginning of that whole subgenre, comedy horror
Yeah.
with it.
I think where I first got into the Abbott Costello horror comedy stuff is me and Steve, well, he didn't really give candy to the trick or treaters before me, except one year when he accidentally I guess he had his porch light on or something, and the trick or treaters came because they thought, oh, his porch light's on. He must be handing out candy. And they came and knocked on his door. And he had bought some candy for himself to eat. I said, Steve, please tell me you gave those kids some candy. He said, yeah, I gave them some candy. They came to my door. But traditionally, Steve didn't do that prior to me. So after we got married, I was like, I'm handing out candy on Halloween. I gotta do it. I want to do this for the kids. So Steve started showing a movie in the background, like, because they come to the door, they can see our big screen TV. So we have to keep it clean because you got little kids coming up to your door. You don't want some slasher movie where somebody's getting stabbed to death or a couple's having sex or a woman's boobs are out. You don't want that happening, right? So Steve started putting on like Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein on Halloween, at least during the trick or treat hours. And so that's when I really started paying attention to it and stuff. I was like, this is really funny. I like these guys, and I love the balance of horror and comedy in this. That is just fantastic.
Mm.
Um, so Basically, what I can tell you about Coming Soon is it's a trailer compilation. It's a short trailer compilation. You got Miss Jamie Lee Curtis in there as the wraparound person. And one of my favorite things about this is they show several scenes of Hitchcock, Alfred Hitchcock, doing the famous trailer for Psycho and for the birds as well. But I always loved the Psycho one because Alfred Hitchcock had very dry humor. And so he comes in there and he said, I'm going to tell you about this new movie. And he starts telling it like it's a story about a murder that happened, like a real murder that happened. And he talks about the motel, and then he goes up to the big house, and he takes you through the house, and he talks about the different murders and stuff. And then he goes back down to the hotel or the motel, and he goes in the bathroom. And when he pulls the shower curtain back, you see Janet Leigh screaming, and it shows Psycho across there. That is genius to me. That is absolute genius. And I think Alfred Hitchcock was a genius. He was a genius director. He was a genius at making these trailers for his films as well. And I think part of that genius came from his dry humor.
And I've always seen that too, what you're talking about, the Psycho trailer that he presents. And I'm to this day, I'm still shocked that they revealed that much of that scene in the trailer. Because that's one of the like pivotal scenes in the entire film.
Yeah.
Is what is, that made that film get a name for itself. Because usually when you're, if you talk to like people like us, that's diehard horror fans and stuff, that have seen Psycho, we'll probably go and like into a lot of different things involved in the film. But if Psycho has been a big thing in pop culture over more than just horror fans. It's a very well known film just in pop culture and to casual viewers of films. And that's one of the first things that people are always allude to is the shower scene with Janet Leigh. And it's been spoofed in other films. It's been referenced in a lot of different stuff. So it's always like still surprising to me that either he did that intentionally or because I'm always like, why would he give that away in the trailer?
I'm wondering though if this, I don't know this for a fact or anything. I haven't looked it up. But I'm wondering if he did that trailer sometime after the film had been out for a little bit.
Well, that's also possible. Like I said, I've seen the one you're talking about, and I don't know if that was released before or after the film.
But it was still during that time where it specifically says on there the movie that you have to watch from the beginning. No one will be seated after the movie is started. And I think that was something that Alfred Hitchcock requested, that once Psycho starts, nobody else can be seated.
They should do that with every movie.
Well, that's what, yeah, but of course, the minute I say that, that's going to piss some people off because they'll say, well, I don't want to come. I get to a movie later because I don't want to watch all the previews and stuff like that. I've heard people complain like that, but I agree with you, Chris. I think that they should do that with all movies.
And that's another interesting thing you brought up. Like, how long have they been doing this where they have trailers before the film? At what point did they was there just they would just show the movie and no trailers before that?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I thought at first you were going to say because they didn't used to show as many trailers. when I first started going to the movie theater, they would show 2, 3 maybe, if that many, and then you'd get to the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when me and Steve go to the movies, you not only have up 10 million trailers, but you have commercials and everything else in there. Commercials for vehicles, for Coca-Cola products, or whatever they want to put in there.
Well, yeah, they do that, and but I guess it just depends on who's paid for advertising on what, because
Yeah.
we've been to movies at the theater where it'll show like one trailer before it goes right into the movie. Or there's sometimes we have went where they didn't even show any trailers. As soon as they started, it just went straight into the movie.
Straight to the movie, yeah.
So I guess it's just all a matter of like what kind of advertising the film is paying for.
And what theater it's being shown in, how big is the town that you're in, because this has been this way probably since the beginning of me and Steve's marriage, if not just before we got married, at least in Louisville, that they've showed a ton of trailers and had commercials in it.
I know, like before they actually like start the film reel or whatever at our local theater, they'll just show like local businesses in our area, like commercials for them,
Yeah.
and then they'll take that off, and then they'll start the projector up in the projection booth that it shows whatever they're showing, and they'll do like these little games and stuff before. I don't know if you've ever been
we get little like trivia things. It'll
trivia,
show
or they'll show like a shadow of a character or something. You have to guess who it is.
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
Yeah. So there's not a whole lot I can say about a trailer compilation other than it's a decent, albeit shorter, trailer compilation than you guys might be used to nowadays, because this was what, 1982, 83. I think 82 it was. But so there's not a lot of meat to it, but I did enjoy watching it. I did enjoy seeing Jamie Lee Curtis, and I thought she was a great addition to this. And she had a connection early on with Mick Garris, which is, I'm sure, was why she was in this. And then later, she was in Trading Places, which John Landis directed.
Yep.
So,
Trading Places.
Yeah. Her, and as Joe Bob would say, two enormous talents. Or
yeah, there's a whole lot of her in Trading Places.
Yeah, if you want to see a whole lot of Jamie Lee Curtis in more ways than one, watch Trading Places. You're not going to see a whole lot of Jamie Lee Curtis as in the female form if you watch her in those early horror films like Halloween and Prom Night and stuff like that. But,
speaking of Jamie Lee Curtis, though, I seen something today of some like behind the scenes photos of where they're shooting a new Freaky Friday movie with her and Lindsay Lohan.
Oh Lord!
I never seen the older one, like the first Freaky Friday with
Jodie Foster on it.
No, I'm talking about the one with Jamie Lee Curtis.
Okay.
The first one they did together, but apparently they're doing a new one, and I'm like, okay, whatever.
Okay, yeah.
I'm not interested, but I'm sure there's some people that will be.
Oh yeah, but I think I did see the first Freaky Friday remake with Jamie Lee Curtis and Lindsay Lohan, and it was okay. But I'm
not a Lindsay Lohan fan,
I'm
really. Now I did like the movie Mean Girls, though. I will say that. I thought it was a really, really funny movie. I can't remember who made that movie, but like it was actually really entertaining. It's not typically something that I would watch or care for, but I had a lot of people suggest it to me that I was friends.
Chris, did you feel like Mean Girls was kind of a more modern version of Heathers?
Absolutely,
Mm,
in some ways,
right.
but there's definitely some stuff in Mean Girls that was a little bit more extreme, I thought, than some of the stuff in Heathers.
Oh, yeah.
Because I've only noticed as time goes by, um, as the generations and go like generation after, kids get more and more cruel. Because kids were cruel when we were young, but I've just noticed as the years have gone by that kids have gotten even more and more cruel, and a lot of that applies to like social media and just stuff on the internet and all that. So yeah, it's we try our best. I mean, Candace, we try our best to keep Noah away from certain aspects of that stuff because you don't never want to see your child get hurt.
No, you don't. You definitely don't. Batman mentions True Lies. Yes, if you want to see, this is coming from a woman. When Jamie Lee Curtis does that dance, that's all I'm going to say about it. When she does that dance in True Lies, it's like, whoa, And this was older Jamie Lee Curtis, not old as in like ancient Jamie Lee Curtis,
This
but
was I always felt like that scene you're talking about with her in True Lies. I always felt like that was kind of a I don't want to say spoof, but kind of of striptease.
yeah.
But I don't know because it really reminds me of the scene with Demi Moore and Burt Reynolds and striptease.
Mm-hmm. And Batman says JLC did a striptease dance in True Lies. Yes, yes, she did. So, Chris, before we give our ratings on Coming Soon, is there anything additional you wanted to say about it, or anything that stands out that you want to mention?
I can't really because I've never seen it.
Okay, I didn't know it. I didn't know if you had tried to look it up on YouTube. That's okay.
But I'm just doing like I said earlier. I'm just
Boy, Chris had
bullshitting with you.
he had me fooled because he was like nodding his head when I was saying stuff. I thought, well, Chris has seen this. Um, so I will give my rating on it real quick here. And I'm giving it a 3 deadites out of 5, not because it was bad, but because it's not really a movie. It's not a movie. It's a trailer compilation.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to rate it on a different level than I would rate a John Landis movie. And I hope that people understand that. And when they see that I give it 3 deadites out of 5, that I'm not saying, oh, this is a terrible trailer compilation. Don't watch it. No, I'm not saying that. Definitely watch it. You can find it on YouTube. Honestly, it's not the best quality, folks, but it's only in a VHS or Laserdisc format. So you got to take what you can get with that. But I would recommend it. Like I said, you can watch it for free on YouTube. It's a little less than an hour, and it's got some enjoyable trailers in it, especially the Alfred Hitchcock stuff, which I would highly recommend. And yeah, so I've blabbed until I shouldn't blab anymore. But Chris, is there anything in closing you want to say about any of the movies we talked about, or is there something you want to promote or talk about before we get off here?
Not really. We've I can't really think of anything. I mean, if anybody's wondering, that did follow our channel, Death by Stereo podcast, you probably noticed that we've not had a lot of anything on that channel here lately. So me and Candace are just kind of taking a break right now from that. I mean, I'm still doing these streams and stuff when I get time with Dana, but this is easy. This is on. See, like me and Candace, we go in there and there's a lot of like editing and stuff because all of our stuff is not live streamed. It's it's all pre-recorded. We do a lot of different editing stuff, and it can be a task sometimes. Especially when we got other things going on right now in our personal lives stuff too, because and I won't get into that, but there's just right now it's just there's a lot of stuff going on between like just issues with our house, and Candace's mom is having health issues and stuff, and we're helping out with her and stuff. But I can't say when, because we really don't even know ourselves right now. But we will be back. We will be back with the Death by Stereo podcast channel and finishing up everything that we were doing with those series, with the Monster series and the Video Dead series. So yeah, just anybody that did check us out, for what we have so far, thank you. I appreciate that. Appreciate the support, and just stay tuned, I guess.
Okay. And Candace, speaking of Candace, she's in here now. She said, "Hey guys, just now getting to join the chat. I've been watching the whole time though." And she also says, "There's just so much that I barely have time for anything right now." And I feel you, Candace, and I feel Chris too. I understand completely about all that. Batman says, "I forgot to mention this a couple of months ago. I now have 2 copies of the Porky's Trilogy VHS box set, an open one and a sealed one." So, Batman, are you going to keep both of them for yourself, or are you gonna try to flip one of those? Um, I guess it probably depends on if he's planning on watching them or not. If it was me, I would keep the sealed up set and try to see if I could flip the other one. Might not get as much for it, um, but yeah, I want to remind everybody, of stuff that I've got coming up before we get off of here. So tomorrow night will be a pre-recorded Everybody Wants England. It won't be live. So if all of a sudden you see this video pop up for Everybody Wants England, don't think that, oh damn, I missed a live stream with Dana, because I think that's throwing people off just a little bit. And I'm sorry for that, but hopefully everybody will get situated and know which are lives. And it's like basically every other night I'm doing a live. So Everybody Wants England will be pre-recorded.
I just remember one other thing I guess I wanted to mention. So if anybody's watched any of these past streams with me and Dana, you may have heard me mention a few different times that I'm excited about seeing Deadpool and Wolverine, which does come out this Friday. And
Yes, it does. Candace says, "Great stream, guys. Once I get off here, I'm going to listen to my favorite Red Fox album. You got to watch that."
yeah,
I'd like to be sitting around listening to that with you, Candace.
you
That sounds.
certainly do. Gotta wash your ass.
But let's see, what else have I got going on? Let's see. Wednesday, and Chris might be interested in this. I rescheduled the Apples and Oranges talking about Night of the Living Dead 90.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I forgot about that.
So they Candace's mom became ill. I don't think they will mind me saying this because I've already said it before, but she became ill suddenly, and that put the kibosh on Chris being on there last week. So I decided at the beginning of the stream, I was like, "Hey, I'm just gonna like cancel this one, and we're gonna reschedule it for next week." And so that'll be Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern time. Thursday will be another pre-recorded stream, or video rather, for I Know What You Shot on Video. I'm going to be talking about another shot on video, a couple of those films. Friday, if all goes well, me and Candace will be doing the Friday Foolish that we've been trying to switch around several different times, because this past time it was because one, both of us were kind of ill, and Friday put the kibosh on us actually doing it on Friday. Then we were going to do it on Sunday, and poor Candace got sick, and then I was feeling under the weather, and it just didn't work out. So we're planning on doing the favorite horror masks and favorite horror characters, and that does include horror makeup, like Freddy Krueger makeup, for instance, in there. And then Chris may like this. I just thought of it while we were talking about these movies. So I'm going to be doing a Clockwork Orange watch along starting at 7 p.m. Eastern Time this Saturday. But Sunday, I'm thinking of doing an American Werewolf in London, and that'll be at 7 p.m. Eastern Time as well. So if y'all are at all interested in those two movies, or if you want to join us live on the stream, please let me know. I know Candace wants to do a Clockwork Orange with me. I know
Yeah.
she's already said that. So if anybody's interested, Chris, you're included in that, wants to join me for either a Clockwork Orange or an American Werewolf in London, just let me know, and
Okay.
I'll make sure I get the link to you so you can join us. As long as you behave, you can be on the stream with us. Don't be being weird or anything. So,
Yeah.
um, but I guess. Oh, Candace says, thank you for rescheduling that A Clockwork Orange watch along for me. I was real looking forward to that. And I knew you were, Candace. And to tell you the honest truth, I wasn't really feeling myself to be doing it anyway. And so it worked out for everybody, I think, that I rescheduled it. But I guess that's all for tonight. Me and Chris have been on here uh 2 hours and 32 minutes
Wow.
talking about John Landis movies and everything in between, which I had a lot of fun. I want to thank Chris for being on here with me for Landis Confidential. And I want to thank everybody that was in the chat. We had several people come in a little bit later. And I also wanted to tell Chris, I didn't know if he noticed, but our Wes Craven's New Nightmare watch along has almost 400 views on it.
Wow, really? Oh,
It
wow.
may have 400 now. It had like 300.
That's awesome.
Yep. Phil says a Clockwork Orange watch along. Wow. I don't know if that's a good wow or a bad wow, Phil. Hopefully it's a good wow.
I think it's a good one. I think Phil's a fan of Clockwork Orange, so
Phil's
I haven't seen Phil in a long time though, man.
I haven't seen Phil in person. He's been chatting with me a little bit through Facebook Messenger lately, but
I want to say the last time I seen him was at Scarefest, and that was like 10 years ago or something.
Phil's still kicking. He's still around, so that's always good because I love Phil. Phil is a really nice guy and a horror fan to boot, so that makes it all good. But I guess me and Chris will call it a night, and be sure to tune in for the pre-recorded Everybody Wants England tomorrow night. I'll get it up at some point, but I'm probably going to have to watch 3 more movies. So now that they're pre-recorded, I'm a little bit lax about getting it on there at a certain time. Phil says I would never show Clockwork Orange to my wife. Yeah, you got to be careful who you show Clockwork Orange to. It's not for everybody. It's not for everybody. I know that. But we're going to get out of here for the night. But thank you guys for tuning in and hanging out with me and Chris tonight. And we'll see everybody next time. But before I go, I gotta do my tagline. Well, me and Chris are off like a dirty shirt first. And as always, I want to remind everybody to be kind to one another and blaze that trail. And Phil, I hope I do see you in Kentucky. You say maybe next year. I'm looking forward to it. Bye, Candace. Bye, everybody else. Good night, Chris. And
Nah.
we'll see everybody next time.
Bye, everybody.